Welcome to Monday Motivations, 52 Weeks to a More Purposeful You. This week we have Tony Cooper, and we're going to be talking about balance and a little bit about Tony. I can't even remember what year we met, but somebody brilliant said, Corey, you have to meet with Tony. And I remember that first meeting at Starbucks. You brought the multicolor markers as a gift for me. And I just walked away from that meeting literally forever changed for many. I think the reason that you have had such an impact on me, one of them is that to your core, I feel like everything that beams out of you is just pure desire for truth. I feel like you're really about truth. And you have a way of being able to just kind of drop these little loving truth bombs in a way that caused me, and I think you caused others, to feel both loved and also challenged at the same time. And that's a really unique gift. So I'm excited for our audience. I'm going to read your fancy bio, but that was my Corey bio for Tony.
That was great, Corey.
You're like, no, let's just stick with that. No, okay.
Well, yeah, it's good. I mean, it's good. I mean, it's one. Thank you. I mean, it feels good to be seen, in that way. And yeah, you're right. I mean, truth is really important to me. Not that there is like a truth that we're all kind of going for, but like to come from truth, to come from a place, where you believe in this whatever you believe in. I guess we always believe in what we believe in, but that there's this, the truth hits you in a way that just feels you're present to something bigger than yourself. And it does, it motivates me. I do try to bring that to people I work with. And you're right, it is loving. I always hope the love can be felt, but it also is confronting, and we all need to be confronted and need to be challenged, because we can get, hey, maybe there's a good lead into the balance conversation. We can get locked into the way things are pretty easily, and maybe that feels like balance to us or something like that. So there's almost like people have called me a shit disturber. People have called me, I remember really early on, the very first job I had, on my performance review, my boss wrote down, he goes, Tony is disruptive in the name of harmony. And I thought it was such a poetic thing to put into a performance review. Now, he did not mean it positively. That was not a compliment.
It sounds like a compliment.
I took it like a compliment. I was like,
I want to be that.
You get me.
Disruptive in the name of harmony.
Yeah. I was like, well, at least you get why I do it. So I'm not trying to just mess things up. I'm, but I do work with people who are ready to tackle themselves and, figure out, who they are and what their perspective is on the world, and bring that more fully to the world, and, live more fully into their potential, which I think is just, calling card of any coach would probably say something like that. But it's, it's what I don't know what to do if I'm not doing that.
So just so other people really know, I know you're a coach, but I want to make sure we'll post this in the notes. But Tony Cooper is a CEO of Market Force. He helps business leaders simplify complicated issues and helps them gain new skills and insights. Since 2002, Tony has trained, coached, and consulted. Prior to Market Force, he held positions at General Motors Saturn as a Silicon Valley product design consultant, and founded Splinter Furniture Design. Tony is an active volunteer for community-based organizations and loves water sports. In his youth, he was nationally ranked diver and Tae Kwon Do martial artist. And now, after a lifetime of city dwelling, he is raising his family on a farm in Davis, California. So thank you. And let's kind of go back real quick to truth. So you know how, and I think this is going to tie in with balance, because I think that there's kind of two kinds of truths. There's the truth that is our truth, like here's my truth, here's what I perceive. But I've recently been grappling with the idea of, like, I do think that there is like one truth of a situation. So like, let's just say a conflict in a
Right.
relationship. So one person has a truth about it and their perspective based on their limited things that they're capable of seeing or that they have seen.
Right.
And then the other person has their truth that is 100% accurate based upon their limited perspective. But imagine if, like, I think that from an outside looking in, I feel like that there is a truth that can be named that's universal. What do you think about that?
Number of things. So how much time do we have here?
I know.
All right. So what you were triggering in me was when I first started coaching, I realized that I didn't really know what I was doing. I'm a business person, and I like to help other people with their businesses, and I like to figure out answers to complicated problems. And it's why I got a degree in engineering, and that was my original part of my career. But I love doing the same thing in business, but ultimately I really like doing it with people. And so when I started coaching, I realized I didn't know too much about how to do this, how to pay attention, how to help solve problems for other people. So one of the things I did was I invested in a mediation training. So
Ooh,
I was
that's so
trained in the
good.
city of San Francisco when I was living there, offers free mediation to its citizens. Now, a lot of people don't even know that, but if you're having a dispute with your neighbor, the city will provide free mediation. It was the organization was called Community Boards, and they offer training of mediation for people to become volunteer mediators for the city. And so I did that for a number of years. I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it as being just a supporter of the community. But a couple of things became very clear. So this is I think directly answering your question, was I made an observation that nobody ever expressed an opinion because they thought they were wrong. So the truth is that whatever I believe to be true is true. Like, that's a truth. That is a truth we can all agree to. Now, what I believe to be true is different in every single person, and that's based on our own experiences and our beliefs and our judgments and our styles and our upbringings and everything. So what happens when you get two people together in a mediation, you have two people talking about the same thing, but from very different perspectives. So maybe the answer to your question is the truth is the thing they're talking about, right? So in a dispute, it's you park your car in front of my house.
I can't believe you're using this example
Oh,
because
why is
my
that?
20-year-old daughter,
Uh-huh.
she bought a house that she rents, and then she has 3 rooms that she rents out of it, and she's dealing with this problem.
Right. I mean, there's a few things. There's barking dogs, there's loud music, there's where you're parking your vehicle, there's the trees that are growing over property lines. Like, these were all the things, the majority of what people got dispute resolutions about. Now, why does the city provide free resolution services? Because going unabated, these can lead to murder.
Yeah.
And they're like, we'd much rather deal with the dispute. And so when you're in a mediation, there are 3 things that are happening simultaneously when people are talking about things. There is the facts of the situation, the things we can all agree to. So there's the truth, right? There is today is Monday, right? We all agree to that. There's a truth. There are universal truths we all agree to, but we all have different thoughts and feelings about them, which lead to interpretations. So there's facts, thoughts, feelings, and interpretations. And so that's where we start getting very, very separated from each other. And it feels like my truth is very different than yours. And so most people, when they're in a dispute, what they're trying to do is come up with a good enough argument to convince the other person that they're wrong. As soon as the other person believes that they're wrong, then we can be done with this thing because now you can agree with me. But both sides are trying to do that, and neither side's trying to not do that. So the disputes go on, and they escalate. And so the only other truth that sits in there is that the path of resolution is always through empathy.
Yes.
It's always through, I don't have to condone or agree with your point of view, but I do have to put myself in your position to understand that based on how you see the world, I can see why you believe this to be true.
Okay. Okay, now let's talk about this. So the path to resolution is empathy. So you're listening, but how do two people, like one doesn't assume taking on, like, so you listen empathetic. It's almost like we got to get both people listening empathetically.
Right. And
So
that's the
that-
role of the mediator. You go, okay, Corey, your turn to talk. The other person, your turn is to listen. And
Mhm.
it's not to try to agree, and don't try to argue, and don't try to defend, but just as Corey is talking, put yourself in her position, in her situation. Can you see how she got to the place where she thinks this is true?
Mhm. Yeah.
And you go, yeah, I can see that. I can see, you have a baby at home, and your baby hasn't been sleeping and keeping you up, and you can't really work. And then when I play my music really loud at night, and it's like the moment the baby was finally asleep, it wakes it up again. And now I'm furious. I'm not furious at you. I'm furious that I can't control my life.
Mhm.
You're like, yeah, I get that. I can see that.
Mhm.
That's all that has to happen.
Mm. So if that's all that has to happen, why doesn't that happen in the world?
Because we're very bad at doing it.
Yeah.
And that's what the mediator, the facilitator's job. Because periodically the person can start defending themselves. They're going to start to get angry and like, stop. Your job is just to listen. Don't take it on and wait. And then you go, okay, are you done, Corey? Now I go, okay, what did you hear? Repeat it back.
Yep.
Like, was that right? Do you need to fine tune it? And you do this, and it's literally one person speaking, other listening, and then the person flips it. And then once empathy has come up in both instances, I can see it. What naturally arises in that next moment is when I have nothing further to defend, I have a natural inclination to want to resolve. And so it's out of that facilitation that people get to the place where they start to go, all right, and I'm not going to try to like you, and I'm not trying to win here anymore, but I don't want this pain in my life anymore. So what can we do to get past this? And that's that natural instinct. And so, what are the things that are true about life? One is survival is a core impulse, right? Biology's job is to keep life going. So we all have an impulse towards survival, and we have a defense against anything that's threatening it. And the other thing is we have these mirror neurons in our brains. And a mirror neuron, it has the ability to connect to an experience another person is having and simulate that inside of you. So if you saw someone, a bug crawling on someone's face, right, you would have an experience. No, there's not a bug crawling on your face, but you can feel the feeling of what that would be like because of our mirror neurons. And so mirror neurons allow us to have empathy for other people. So you could say we're hardwired for survival, but we're also hardwired for empathy.
This is so good. What did you say when you said when we have nothing further to defend, we
naturally incline toward resolution? How do we get past this?
Yeah. Okay. This is good. Okay. And then this actually does.
Yeah, but it's like this leading to balance at all?
It sure does. It sure does. Because listen to this quote, Joan Didion's quote. I just loved it. She recently passed, but the willingness to accept responsibility for one's own life is the source from which self-respect springs. And I think that this ties into balance and what we've been discussing on truth and conflict and relationships is that sometimes I think people have a tendency to fall into kind of two survival mechanisms.
Okay.
One survival mechanism is to be outward focused, like how does my friend feel, how does my client feel, and we're noticing and adapting and accommodating what others need. So we get that emotional intelligence quadrant 4 of relationship management, and we feel that responsibility for others. So there's those types of tendencies in survival. And then I think the other type of tendency in survival would be for us to be self-focused,
Mhm,
and taking full-blown responsibility for self.
mhm,
But
mhm,
I think what balance is, and what this quote can cause us to think about, is it's not just about responsibility for our own life, but the impact it's having on others. So there's a balance there. And
mhm.
then that awareness and the balance of caring about other people and caring for self is what can make self-respect and then also respect for others. So what do you think about that as trying to make this fit? I know, naturally
Yeah,
fitting into balance.
yeah, I think that that's a really good question. I like that quote too. It's when you take responsibility for yourself, that's the pathway to self-respect. If you're respecting yourself, then you have a higher capacity for respecting others, right? So you're saying from the balance is like there's a threshold, or there's some membrane between me and the rest of the world. It's an illusion, right? So it's all connected. It's all the same thing, but I have a sense of self, and that self doesn't exist in any sort of vacuum. And we're always in relationship with others. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, whatever I think about myself, however I treat myself, I'm going to reflect that externally to others. So I
Mhm.
think, and so, the question is that, what does that do with balance? Well, certainly the more balanced I feel, the more balanced I will act in my treatment of others, in the treatment of the world. The more imbalance I feel, the more out of balance that I feel, the more likely that my environment around me will reflect that.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's a balance to have consciousness of ourself without becoming narcissistic.
Hmm, hmm.
And then also yeah, it's a balance.
Yeah.
And how do we do that even in just one email strand? I mean, we
Hmm,
could analyze, from that more engineer mindset. Like, you go back and you read an email strand from start to finish.
hmm,
Where did we either abandon ourselves and
hmm,
give in to
hmm.
prevent a conflict,
Right.
or where did we just keep dominating and shoving and shoving and shoving and pushing, in which we force another person to abandon themselves?
Right. Right. That's like winning the argument.
Right.
Hmm. Yep. Hmm. Yeah. Kept me thinking,
Mhm.
Corey.
Mhm.
Um, So a lot of that the self and other, I like the idea that they're not wholly separate, that they're somehow connected. And when I'm too focused on myself, then I'm not noticing that there's another person there who has different needs than myself. And I'm
Mhm.
not adjusting my approach to work more effectively. Like, the way I like to be talked to is not necessarily how other people like to be talked to.
Mhm.
So what works for me, if I use that every time because hey, it works for me, it must work for everybody, I'm going to find that that doesn't work a lot.
Mhm.
And then instead of me taking responsibility for it, like I should have paid attention to what the other person's needs are and adjusted my approach. I'll just make them wrong. I can't get along with that person, right?
Yep.
That person's mean. That person's disrespectful. That person, like, I'll categorize them or justify their behavior in a particular way to make me feel good about myself, and then I'm really bifurcating self and other.
Mhm.
But the opposite is very true. What you're saying, which is, but if I care so much about the other person that I don't put any attention of myself, well, then I'm being an inauthentic version of me, expecting someone to like me for who I'm not,
Mhm.
and I'm giving everything to them,
Mhm.
caring more about them than I'm caring for myself. And so there's another disconnect. And so
Mhm.
there's a lot, there's like, how do you follow that line to know that you're respecting yourself while you're respecting others, while you're, staying connected to what's really important in the world and to each other collectively? I mean, even going back to mediation, like, both parties have to want to sit down and find a resolution. Like that's the first agreement. Said, do you want a resolution? Yes. Are you committed to being right? Yes. Well, it's not going to work.
Ooh, that's a good question. Are you committed to being right? Ooh.
Yeah, old coach of mine used to say, Tony, you could be right or you could be happy. Pick one.
Right. Mhm.
Right? Like, no, I want both.
Exactly. Yeah. So this balance between having self-awareness and other awareness,
Mm.
it's not really a straight line though.
Well, that's good. So I operate under this philosophy like that, you and I are both in the change business, bringing about
Yes.
change for people. And so this theory of change that I work with is all change begins with self-awareness,
Mhm.
right? And that's back to your quote of just, I have to take responsibility for myself,
Mhm.
but I have to be able to see these parts of myself that I've really, really intentionally hidden
Or unconsciously.
or unconsciously, right? Hidden from myself, right? So they
Yes.
sit in blind spots. The thing about a
Yes.
blind spot, people, when people tell you they're like, I don't have any blind spots. I'm like, how would you know? Like, the
There's
definition of
one.
a blind spot is you can't see it. That's why it's
Yeah.
called a blind spot.
Yeah.
But it's usually perfectly obvious to all the people around you, right? And so your job is to become self-aware of all your tendencies and of all your ways of being that impact people at all the time. So you can see them. So Eckhart Tolle said, awareness is the greatest agent of change.
Mhm.
So if I can't see it, I can't do anything about it. But if I can see it, now there's something I can do, which is that's step one. So self-awareness is step one. Management or self-control or something along those lines, step two.
Yeah.
Right? So I have to not only be able to see it, I need to be able to change my behavior as a result of it. Now, all of that is designed to just lower the level of stress and pressure I feel on my body, which has me less oriented to that biological fear of survival.
Right.
And so when I am not feeling any sort of threat, I managed myself, I've calmed myself down. You can say I've created balance in myself. Now I can actually externalize my attention.
Yes. This is
Now I can
really
look
good.
at what's going on for other people because I know what it feels like to feel triggered that way.
Yeah.
I've managed it, but I can have empathy for what other people are going through. So that self-awareness now brings about that other people are wired differently than me. And so now you can call it relationship management, but you're essentially situational mastery. Like I can now start to manage the world outside of me because I've done the work to manage it inside of me.
Oh, this is so good. There's so many different models and modalities that are overlaying in here. So when you brought up change, we're in this to help people create change, and we were talking about balance in relationship and that connection, being connected. I actually just did a retreat with a team, and we're really working on the ability to overcome conflict. And I called a colleague of mine, and I got kind of recharged on some ideas. She specializes in conflict, and she gave me a definition of how she uses conflict, or the definition of conflict with people. And she says, all conflict is a signal that something wants to change in the relationship. And so and if that's true, which I believe that it is, that conflict, it's the signal that something wants to change. And every time there's change, it's uncomfortable, and we have to have that balance of, what do I want and need? What do they want and need? How do I, like you said, self-regulate, or I think you said, calm your nervous system, so we can have empathy and listen. So this is all, tying together. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Good stuff, all on the
Yeah.
topic of balance.
Yeah. And I also liked, in your writing on it, the acknowledgement that it's not real. Like balance isn't real.
Right. Totally.
And it's an illusion.
Yep.
Actually, you know what? I'm gonna finish with something So behind me, you can't see because it's faded out, but behind me I have these two paintings.
Ooh. Ooh.
And they're these balanced eggs. And so there's this Belgian artist, and they're called Equilibrium.
Okay.
And not only are they impossibly balanced on each other, you can see like they're floating. They're not even on anything.
Mm.
Right. So it's definitely an interpretation of the illusion of balance, and that we're seeking balance, but balance is not a destination. It's not a place to get to, but it might be a place to come from. And so, that's why, if you want to know if something's real, find evidence of it in nature. And so in nature, there's no balance. And in fact, so we were traveling a couple of years ago in our RV cross country, and we spent some time in Utah, and at Arches National Park, there's this rock, like impossibly balanced on another rock. And it's people stop and just stare at it. Like they're just fascinated. They're taking pictures of it. You're like, if balance was a natural course of nature, we wouldn't even notice it.
Right.
But yet we're stopping. It's so interesting. We have to take pictures of it. And so you go, well, what does nature show us? Well, everything is in constant change. Like trees, like here we are, springtime, right? So all the leaves are coming back out on the tree. So for like a tree, it's either leaving or losing its leaves. Like things are either growing or they're decaying. The moon is always like waxing or it's waning. Tides are like ebbing or flowing. Movement. Right now, there's an overall sense of it's all in balance. Like if you look at the tides in the ocean, it moves this way, it moves that way. If you kind of average it all out, you'd see it was balanced, but it's not. It's in constant dynamic. So I kind of abandoned the word balance a number of years ago because it was something I was really pursuing, and then found I was continually frustrated because I couldn't get there. But I've latched onto the word, interestingly enough, harmony. Right, which was that the first performance review was I'm disruptive in the name of harmony, which is almost ironic in its own nature. And I do love irony, so that doesn't surprise me. But harmony is a very like and I'm not you're a singer, aren't you a singer?
No, dancer.
Dancer, okay. So same thing, perfect. A dance troupe, right? Everyone can be a very good individual dancer, but if you're slightly off from each other, like you're in contrast to each other. But when you're dancing with each other in sort of a way, you create a harmony between you. Like there's a vibration and there's a movement. So harmony is a dynamic expression of what we would probably refer to as balance. Like
I like, just to interrupt real quick, I like that analogy because you're connected. Like you said, you can be an individual dancer or singer, but if you want something really powerful, then you're connected. And it kind of goes back to the self-management, other management, self-awareness, other awareness.
Yes.
Sorry.
But even the fascination, I think you also, in your writing, and also talked about how like a ballet dancer could be on point, just perfectly there. Why are we fascinated by them? Because it's perfectly balanced. It's not a normal thing. And to your point, inside of the whole ecosystem of what can pull that off is constant muscles counterbalancing each other. So it's movement. It's a dynamic relationship that creates the illusion of balance. And like we get it, I think we get them in the fall, the murmurations of starlings, the birds that fly around over the fields. You see like thousands of birds, and they're like huge waves, and they
roll
right. Those birds are starlings, and they call that thing a murmuration. And you're like, it's so beautiful, but it's a dynamic movement of something is creating some sort of a balancing something or other. But anyway, I look at that and I call it harmony. And I go, harmony is achievable. Harmony is achievable.
Yeah. Well, and it's about the movement, the aliveness. That's my word for the year. Aliveness.
Good one.
I think that's why this year is so far, I keep saying like, this has been the best year of my life. And it's not that I have less problems or issues or anything, but I feel like I'm I want to tackle things like, and I'm also don't feel impatient to force things to be solved too quickly. I think I've kind of embraced
Yeah.
that balance is counter movements. It is dynamic. Harmony, it takes some effort, some pausing, it's fast, slow, side, frontward, connected with others. I also
Connected with others. Yeah.
connected with others. Well, and it's funny because this year I have really questioned, am I becoming more of an introvert?
Hmm.
And I think what it is no, I'm still the same that I was before, but I was so too much out of balance with constant connection with others that I didn't have like this part of myself that, it's the connecting, but then it's the solitude. And so for me, this is so foreign that I'm like, this must be what it's like to be an introvert. Let me call my friend and tell them about it. Okay, no, I'm an extrovert because I want to call my friend and tell them about it.
Yeah, and finding whatever version of balance, the counteracting of those forces, and
Yeah.
doing that. How are you caring for yourself while simultaneously caring for other, not shorting yourself, not shorting the other, but connected to something broader than any individually. So another Eckhart Tolle-ism from the A New Earth book, which is he talked about, like, we talk about my work-life balance all the time, which is a little weird because work is part of life. I think what people say, like, they mean like work-life, personal life balance, which is, but there isn't. It's the dynamic flow between them. There's no equilibrium of it, but there's the moments where you're more on the business side and you have to communicate that to your personal people. And you have to set that expectation and manage that. And then you have to later balance that out by putting more attention on your personal life and pulling away. But what happens is that your identities rise and fall like the tides do when you put your attention on the different things. He was talking more about mind-body balance, which is a whole other layer, because it's all internal, and how are you working with one over the other. But ultimately where he got to was this balance that he proposes between human and being as an overall experience, because at some level we're all spiritually sourced. We're angels connected to things way beyond this terrestrial experience we're having. And we're humans, and we've got these meat bags we're walking around inside of, and we live in this version that feels very, very real. I would say, like, reality is very convincing.
Yes. Yeah. Well, it's funny how you talk about that balance of human and being, because earlier this year, I'm always, whenever like I'm say reading the Bible and there's something that just like catches my eye, I try to like look it up, like, what does this mean? And I was reading something in like Chronicles, and it kept mentioning like there were 6 of this and there were 6 of that. So I was like, does 6 have a meaning? Like 3 has a meaning, 7, certain numbers have a meaning. And 6 does have a meaning. It has to do with human, which is imperfect. And there's more to it that I don't even remember. But the main thing I got from it, even in my little, just a tiny aha, and I think it's helped me this year, is I'm being more patient with myself and others about, like, I'm human. Yes, I'm striving to be this, as best as I can. But I think I used to be way too idealistic of myself and others, which created a lot of frustration. And that's an imbalance. So just that balance of human being, I love that balance of showing up in relationship, self and other, balance of truth, their truth, my truth. As we start to, bring this conversation to a close, what is your advice to yourself and others on the topic of balance or harmony, however we want to phrase it?
Yeah, I believe if we're listening carefully, we can hear our whatever the instrument is inside of us that measures that feeling of balance, which is a feeling of being true to yourself, being true to your values, being connected, both. I've always thought, life's a funny thing because at some level it's extremely serious. It has very serious implications if you don't handle it properly.
Yeah.
Right. And in fact, no matter what you do, the only guarantee is we're all going to die. Right. We don't get to escape that. So life will wind up in death. My sister-in-law died a few years ago, and it was really difficult for me. And I remember reading somewhere that said, death is not the opposite of life. It's birth is the opposite of death. Death is the opposite of birth. But that life is this experience we're having. And so at some level, it's very serious, but also most of it it's just kind of a game. It's all a game, we all live in this reality that we're creating illusions at all time that we all believe in, like money, like money's a real thing.
Right.
Like a national border is a real thing, or like, or like that there's separation between religions. I mean, they're all.
Yeah.
Okay.
All, So today, or it was either today or yesterday, I was turning down the street coming home, and I see a mom like with her kids in the car, and she's at the stoplight, and she's literally two-handedly like texting, and so, first a part of me is like, look at her texting and driving, and then another part of me is like, yeah, that's why I do it too. And then another part, and then the end result of it, I was like, I can't believe that there is a law that almost nobody follows. Not just that one, but then it got me thinking, there's so many things that we pretend is real, but it's like not real. Like, I'm constantly seeing, not on it, I don't want to get on a tangent about the texting and the laws, but it's like, there's a lot of things that's not real.
Right.
That we're just.
But just because they're not real doesn't mean they're not good.
Serious or good.
Yeah. But they're just, but we just have to remember to take them seriously, but remember it's a game.
Hold them lightly, like not too clenched. Yeah.
Look, I mean, there are certain things that are just stupid. Like, you could argue grammar is stupid.
Right.
But it's, at some level, it holds society together.
Yeah.
Like, we all agree that things are a certain way and we follow it, not because it's important or it's real. It's because the following it and the community agreement to something is important is what keeps society together.
And it keeps us connected.
It keeps us connected. And so, we all have this internal guidance system that tells us if we're being true to ourselves or not, if we're being true to society or not, if we're taking advantage of a situation or not. And if we got really, really good at listening to that, we'd hear as soon as we got out of balance, as soon as we got off whack, and we'd correct it, and we wouldn't let our internal dialogue convince us otherwise. And so, but that's the great experience of being alive. Yeah, that's what we're doing. We're seeing how true we can be to ourselves while we're, I think, connected and committed to society.
Well, I'm not going to mess that up by adding anything to it, but I will close with a huge heart of gratitude. Thank you so much for contributing to our listeners and for sharing on this topic of balance. It's week 25 in Monday Motivations. This is a YouTube channel, also a podcast. And then next week is going to be week 26. We're going to be talking about simplicity. Thank you, Tony Cooper. And everybody can find you at marketforceleader.com.
At Marketforce Global.
Marketforceglobal.com.
Yeah. And my personal email address is t-like-tony@gmail.com.
Oh, that's so perfect. t@gmail.com.
Oh,
you spell it out.
Tony.
T-like-Tony at gmail.com.
Right. I wasn't that early in the.
Okay. I was like, dang, you got the T?
Yeah.
Thank you, Tony. I really appreciate you. And we will see everybody else next week.
Thank you.